Welcome to our first edition of Ask Susie, where you can ask Susie whatever you'd like. We've gotten several questions already, and so it may take us some time to get through all of them. So please keep submitting your questions. We want to know what you want to know. So our first question came from Stacia Anderson in the quality. A couple months ago, we implemented a new tool called Quiventus to help us improve throughput. Susie, can you tell us a little bit about the motivation behind getting Quiventus and how our throughput statistics have improved since Quiventus was implemented?
For sure. Well, I appreciate all of the questions. So Quiventus came on board as actually another throughput measure. So Quiventus puts all of the data of barriers to discharge in one location. So we use that platform to identify whether it's procedures or orders or radiology orders that are still unresolved, to kind of estimate the discharge date and figure out how compliant we are on that discharge date, and then address any barriers and get patients out. And as a result of Quiventus, since we implemented, we have seen a 9-point change in our scale overall from where we started to where we are, which is an equivalent of about a 20% of a day. So it really has been an improvement in hours to discharge as opposed to true days. What we expect to see in the next couple of weeks is actually an avoidable day, and a complete avoidable day, which has been topics that we've talked about for a long time, which just increases that throughput overall. We have learned a lot of lessons. We've increased a fair amount of communication, and for the executive team and some of the other leaders that review that dashboard, it is a one place to see everything. Where Epic, you have to go to several different reports to see some of the same stuff. So we're tracking and trending it. We always are trying to improve it. We're trying to make sure that there's not duplication a lot. We know that there are parts, especially with the care progression team, that there is a slight duplication, which we're working with Quiventus to eliminate those duplications. And they've come up and improved several elements of Quiventus and plan for several more coming down in the next few months. But the rationale for Quiventus was to address throughput, which we have initiatives through and have had initiatives around for many, many, many years.
All right.
Good question.
Our second question is from Amber Engelhart, one of our clinical coordinators. Would it be possible to get some outdoor seating or an eating area near the cafe?
So in some of the different plans, we've talked about this. So current state, there isn't an immediate plan because we have a couple other big projects that were planned for the entity. So we are going to revamp some of the units for, since we've been open now 16 years, there's a fair amount of money and capital going into some refreshes of several units before we actually move outdoor seating. But we did open the courtyard that is now behind the ER and in between the MOU. So there is some space that's very nice space. I encourage staff to use it. It is for staff. There's fencing around it, and there's dark blinds for the MOU, so there's privacy and vitamin D and sunlight, and it's enclosed so that the wind and all of that is kind of blocked. So I encourage staff to use that, and we have many outdoor seating areas that we can, and we're more than happy to add more outdoor seating areas like picnic tables and those spots as it's suggested by staff. So the answer is outside the cafeteria. We'll look at that and we'll continue to vet that, but there are other locations throughout the entity that you can sit outside, and I encourage you to do so. It's a good moment of pause, reflection. Vitamin D is good for your health and your soul and get you warm, because sometimes this building is very cold. So it's all good stuff.
All right, our last question for today comes from Laura Conley from the GI Lab. We know that our ER has a lot of hold patients. Sometimes we feel like we're busting at the seams around here. Laura asks, why do we keep hold patients in the pre-op area where there's no windows, no showers, and no bathrooms in all the rooms, rather than have those nurses care for the patients in empty rooms on the floors that are just short-staffed?
So current state at St. Luke's East, at least for the last 18 months, we haven't closed beds. So if you close a bed, that's what you're doing when you're short-staffed. So we have not closed any beds overall. And as a result of that, we've been at capacity. So if you look at our true numbers, East has run at 94 to 96% capacity totally for as long as I can remember, honestly. So they are held in what are called alternative care areas, pre-op being one of them. because it's literally up until the MOU opened, the only real estate that we truly had. So although ideal, and we have tried to, as we've built additional rooms, try to really not have to put patients in those alternative care areas. That is one of the options that we have when we're just to the point, busting at the seams. So we continue to evaluate this, but current state with the MOU opening and another 10 beds opening June 1st, the plan would be to put patients obviously in a normal room first. We open those alternative care areas when there is not an open bed upstairs. So if there is patients in the pre-op area and they have a float pool nurse with them oftentimes, if we could put them upstairs, we would have put them upstairs, but it's literally because that is either coming out of surgery, which they need those beds for, or the timing of discharge and so on and so forth of how the volume hit the ER that we've been forced into using alternative care areas. So hope and totally understand that that is not equipped for that, but it's to be temporary in nature. And I think now that we have a little bit more capacity, we are seeing less and less of that usage overall. So good question though.
All right, thank you, Susie, for answering those questions. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this first edition of Ask Susie. Continue to ask your questions and we'll get back to you next time.
Thank you.